and they spent the night outside of his house chanting, saying that if Chuck won't let us dream, we won't let him sleep. So these immigrant activists spent the weekend outside of Schumer's Brooklyn, New York home just to try to, I guess they blame him for caving on the government shutdown. So there you go. They got something in common. All right. Glad you're back with us for the third hour of the Mark Cox Show today. Still plenty to get to here. Lots of issues we haven't gotten to in my stack, but I'll get to more of that coming up in a minute. Right now, let's get to the bottom line.
Here's the bottom line.
Here's the bottom line.
We need to get to the bottom of this.
Get to the bottom of this.
We've got to get to the bottom of this.
The bottom line on the Mark Cox Show.
That's the only way we're going to get to the bottom of
That's the bottom line.
Truth! You can't handle the truth.
All right, we're joined today by 22nd Ward Alderman Jeffrey Boyd from the city of St. Louis. Jeffrey, welcome in.
Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, good to see you again. Glad you could make it over. So, are you enjoying this Trump economy and how things are cooking along? And that's going to mean more revenue for the city and all kinds of good stuff, right?
Well, I'm not sure it's going to mean more revenue for the city right now. I hear that, but I'm not sure how that's going to work. But I'm willing to stay the course and listen and see it run its course.
This is good news for businesses, though. And I pointed this out earlier. All of these businesses across the country that have suddenly given bonuses, Walmart's agreed to bump its minimum wage up to $11 an hour. They all did that in reaction to this tax cut plan, and not because either a local government or the federal government was trying to force a false wage floor on them. I know in the city, did you support the minimum wage hike?
Sure, I do.
You did, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my point is, hopefully this lesson is one that we can learn from, that if businesses are doing well, the economy is going to support an increase in wages for everyone.
Yeah, I think what could potentially be exciting is to go a step beyond just giving a $1,000 bonus. And how about doing a minimum wage of $15 an hour? Now, that would be phenomenal. I mean, if they're getting this windfall of cash back, why not go ahead and increase the minimum wages, right? Because the income for the company is getting ready to go up, right?
Well, I would disagree from this point of view. I mean, I think they have more flexibility because they're going to be able to keep more of the company money that it makes. But what seems to get lost in this is a lot of people, and I saw Chuck Schumer called for the same thing, is that companies don't exist to provide for their employees. If they're a for-profit company, they exist to make a profit and to keep their shareholders happy in most cases.
Yeah, maximize the wealth of their shareholders.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the country we live in. That's the way the economy works. I don't think it's the responsibility of the company to worry about falsely inflating their lowest paid worker just to feel good about it.
Yeah,
it just didn't make sense economically, because once they do that, they're locked into it.
But a company has a social responsibility to the community that they make money with, right? And so it's kind of like going back to the Ford principle. I mean, why make a car, but the people that are creating and making the product for you can't afford to buy it, right? I mean, how many billions of dollars does a company really need without rewarding its employees? You put more money in the economy by paying people better wages. Would you not agree? Because then they can spend more.
Yeah, but you can't just randomly decide that that's how you're going to run the economy, is by making sure everybody gets an increase. It's a vicious cycle, right?
But it's a fair wage. It's a livable wage. I mean, paying somebody, for example, $7.75 an hour is not a livable wage. Would you agree? You wouldn't want your children to work for that type of wage.
But that's not.
Wages.
It is, but that's not ever designed to. Minimum wage was always designed to be entry level. If you come in with no skills,
billions of dollars off of minimum wage employees. Would you not agree?
I don't know that that's true, but I don't think that they've left it at that minimum wage there because they're making billions of dollars off of it. You said companies have a social responsibility to their community.
Sure.
If they buck up and pay $15 an hour for their each employee minimum, and then they end up going out of business because they realize too late that the profits didn't support that, does the community then have a responsibility to get them back on their feet somehow?
Well, certainly
No.
that would be irresponsible for a company to do what you just said, right? I mean, you're not going to increase wages to run yourself out of business. And I'm not talking about those small type of companies. I'm talking about big companies. Let's talk about the companies that are making billions of dollars of profit every year. I mean, where does it stop? At $1 trillion? And we have a lot of big, Walmart, for example, huge profits. $1,000 is a drop in the bucket to pay every employee. Plus, it's not every employee. From my understanding, you have to work there for a certain amount of years. Right?
Walmart is the biggest employer in the country, and they raised their bottom wage from $10 to $11, a full $1 an hour, which, you know, for most of the companies I worked for at the lower wage level, at minimum wage or a little bit above, you know, you might get a 25 or 50 cent an hour wage increase after a year or two, however long you'd been there, whatever it goes up. So to immediately bump that by $1 means everybody above that had to go up some for the company that employs the most people in the entire country. That was pretty big. I wouldn't focus just on the bonus. I'd focus on the fact that, you know, they raised their minimum wage because suddenly they didn't have as restrictive a government tax policy lording over them.
And I would suggest that is a step in the right direction. But there are so many more companies out there that need to increase the minimum wage of their workers so that they can buy more product, so they can contribute more to the community.
Well, as long as we keep
their quality of life.
As long as we keep pouring rocket fuel on this economy the way it is, more and more are going to do that, I think.
Well, I'm not sure about that because historically, again, let's go back to companies are in business to maximize the wealth of the shareholders.
The shareholders, period. Right, that's it.
However, again, I would say there's a social responsibility because what's going to happen if you look at a lot of the movements that have been happening across the country, you're going to probably start seeing people not patronizing those companies when they don't do that. At what point is enough, Mark? And I think that's what a lot of people who are working minimum wage or even $11 an hour is not much.
No, I don't disagree with that.
And you have some people that have 3 or 4 kids, a single mom or a single dad, and they're barely surviving, but they're working. And they're working hard. When you go in some of these department stores, I hate to pick on Walmart. You go in Walmart and Sam's and the Costco's and the Targets. These individuals are working hard. They're not just standing around waiting for somebody to ask them a question. They are moving around and they're making stuff happen.
My first job paid $2.25 an hour at an amusement park working summer help.
Mine too. I worked at the zoo. I was $2 and something.
But you never intended to make that a career. The point is, it was a starting wage, and then you worked your way up from there. Yeah. And every company it's got to start somewhere, but it's also got to be based on some factor of what the return is on that investment.
And you know what? On to that point, I would agree. Start somebody. It's okay to start somebody at $8, $9 an hour and allow them to work their way up to about $15 an hour. But for someone to work there for 10 years and they barely make $9 an hour, that's unacceptable.
I think
and that's happening for some people.
It might happen somewhere. I think most companies have to step up.
And then you talk about the capacity of that person. Everyone doesn't have a college education. Everyone doesn't have a trade skill. You know, some people are laborers, but they work hard.
And there's a shortage of those trade skills these days, too. I just talked to an employer the other day who can't find qualified people because, you know, there are regulations here, regulations there. They have to have this many years of an apprenticeship before they can do this job, and you have to have a journeyman for every 4 apprentices, and it's put such pressure on a lot of these service companies, they can't find employees anymore. We need to make more training like that available to kids who maybe aren't college bound. We have to do that eventually.
Well, you have the Rankin Techs of the world, Nevada Rocks. You have training schools that do that.
Sure.
What I'm finding, and what's the challenge is, a lot of the young adults today are not interested in that type of work. You have technology. They want to work with technology. They want to write apps. They want to play in the technology world. They're not interested. And I talk to a lot of people in the unions, and the average union worker is probably in their late 40s now.
Right.
Because their kids don't want to do it.
Well, they're going to have to, at some point, we're going to have to people at some of these jobs I'm talking about can make $75,000, $80,000 a year, and they can't find people to fill the job.
And what's interesting with all the immigration talk, you're finding that more and more immigrants are willing to take on those type of jobs.
Yeah, they may be. Hey, before we run out of time, you have gotten in a bit of a conflict with Tashara Jones, the city treasurer, over the parking revenue. And I mean, it's kind of odd. I'm not sure any other major city, if I read the story correctly, where the treasurer controls parking operations and all that stuff. What are you trying to do there? Separate that out or increase the share of that money that comes back to the general fund?
Well, here's the bottom line on that. No pun intended. I am suing the state of Missouri for violating the Constitution. Because the Constitution and Missouri Constitution says that the General Assembly shall not require an elected or a public official to serve additional duties. So myself, as the chairman of Streets, Refuse, and Traffic, I'm required by state law to serve as a commissioner. So is the treasurer, so is the comptroller, so is the director of streets, and whoever the treasurer appoints of director of parking operations.
Okay.
That's a violation of the Constitution. So I'm challenging the constitutionality of that. And so the lawsuit is with the state of Missouri, but then you have to drop down and sue the city of St. Louis because we're willing participants, and then every commissioner. So that's what I'm doing. At the end of the day, if the city has local control of its parking operations, more revenue goes into the general revenue fund to provide better city services, like helping out with our homeless issue and helping out with some of our distressed neighborhoods, tearing down more of these dangerous buildings. There are a lot of issues that we need to deal with in the city of St. Louis, and only getting 40% of the revenue generated annually is unacceptable.
Where does the rest of it go?
It's stacking up in investment accounts and in a bank, and it's just sitting there. There's over $22 million currently that's unrestricted funds.
Wow. And the city can't gain access to it through the treasurer's office.
Well, if we had a willing treasurer, and the parking commission, I'm sure, would be willing to allocate more funding to other issues that the city has to deal with. But unfortunately, we have a treasurer that's unwilling. It's
you got
our way of the highway.
Money sitting there you could use for law enforcement or a whole variety of things, right?
A whole variety of things. And we're talking about budget shortfalls here and there of $14 million potentially. That's a big deal. It's a huge deal. And the taxpayers deserve better. And we need to fix a broken system. Right now, it's a system that's not working in the best interest of the taxpayers of the city of St. Louis. And I want to fix that.
Got to meet Chief Hayden the other day, came in the studio and did an interview with us on what he's hoping to do. What do you want to see him do differently than what Chief O'Toole was doing in that role? Well,
here's some of the things that I'm supporting that he and the Director of Public Safety, Judge Edwards, brought up, is they're reallocating the resources. They're looking at identifying, really troubled spots, and they're putting more law enforcement in those areas, and they're collaborating. Imagine that with like the FBI, the DEA, the state and federal government entities to help us in that collaboration.
They weren't doing that already?
Not at the extent it's getting ready to happen.
Okay.
Like right now, for the past several months, we've been collaborating with the Highway Patrol, but we haven't been collaborating in the manner they've put together this. So I'm excited about it.
If they start making a bunch of new arrests, then you got to talk Kim Gardner into prosecuting them, right?
Right, you have to prosecute, but then everyone's entitled to due process, and I'm not going to blame the circuit attorney because some people are not being prosecuted. I'm not an attorney. I don't know exactly what's going on and why some people are let go. But it's not just the circuit attorney. You have judges that are letting people go, and how many times do they get a suspended sentence and probation and probation and probation? They keep violating and violating. So it's the whole justice system that's broken. It's not. Let's not lay the blame at the circuit attorney's office.
Well, all I'm saying is the Highway Patrol came in and made a bunch of arrests, and didn't I read in the paper where Kim Gardner said she didn't have enough staff to handle all that?
Right. That's a challenge, and she became overwhelmed. But here's the lesson learned. Why didn't someone talk to her first so that she could say, okay, now if we do this, I'm going to need additional resources, because if I spend all this time doing traffic violations, then we're not going to be able to do as many murder cases and drug offense cases.
That's true, but the idea was it kind of relieve city police from that burden, right? If you got the Highway Patrol doing it, they can concentrate on...
But good ideas, Mark, have unintended consequences when you don't have every stakeholder at the table. And too often, politicians come up with these great ideas without talking to everyone, and it ends up being a boondoggle.
Well, let us know how that lawsuit goes.
I will.
I'm sure that'll be interesting to see. Is it going to go to a circuit court, or does it go to someone down in Jeff City?
It goes to a circuit court. And
to
February the 1st, I think, is the court date to kind of have all the evidence presented.
Good stuff. Jeffrey Boyd, it's always great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Appreciate that. Jeffrey Boyd, Alderman for the 22nd Ward in the city. We'll get to your phone calls and much more still ahead. 314-969-9797.
97.1, 98.7, AM 1490, and 97.1talk.com.